Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Blood was the first thing I smelled, copper and sweet, before I even realized it was my own. My vision blurred, world tilting on its axis as the freezing cold of the curse began to seize my lungs, turning every breath into a struggle against drowning on dry land. I wasn't supposed to be here, exposed, vulnerable, dying on the cold tile of the dorm room floor, while the one person I had spent the last 6 months avoiding stood over me. But as the darkness clawed at the edges of my sight, I didn't see disgust in Altair's eyes. I saw a terrifying, burning rage, and it wasn't directed at me. "Run," he commanded, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the floorboards. "Don't you dare close your eyes." The Valerian Imperial Academy was a gilded cage designed for the children of gods and generals, not for someone like me. I was a stain on the pristine marble of this institution, a scholarship student admitted only because the dean owed my dead father a debt he couldn't repay with money. I walked the corridors like a ghost, head down, shoulders hunched, hugging the walls to avoid the brutal collision of high-born egos. My name is Renzylander, and I am a walking corpse. At least, that is what the healers in the lower districts told me. They called it the abyssal blight. It wasn't a disease. It was a parasitic magical signature, a void curse that etched itself into the skin, turning flesh into cracked, obsidian scales that wept black ichor when agitated. Fed on emotion. Fear accelerated it. Anger made it burn. Lust made it spread. To survive, I had to be nothing, a vessel of apathy. I wrapped my torso in thick, alchemical bandages every morning, layering a stiff, high-collared uniform over them, even in the sweltering heat of the training grounds. I spoke to no one. I felt nothing. I was invisible, until the housing committee made the mistake that would ruin my life. "Room 404, the proctor had said, handing me a key card that felt too heavy in my hand. "Top floor, executive suite." I had frozen. There must be a mistake. I requested a single in the basement block. The basement flooded. "Zylander. Take the upgrade and move on. You're holding up the line." I took the key, my heart hammering a warning rhythm against my ribs. Stress. Bad. I forced myself to breathe, to lower my heart rate. Be a stone, I told myself. Be nothing. When I unlocked the door to room 404, I realized fate wasn't just cruel. It was laughing at me. Standing in the center of the common room, surrounded by unpacked leather trunks that cost more than my entire village, was Altair Veilron, the crown prince of the fire wielders, the top-ranked duelist in the academy, a man whose very presence commanded the air in the room to heat up. He was shirtless, tossing a shirt onto the velvet sofa, revealing a back sculpted from golden muscle and scarred by dragonfire. He turned, his eyes, the color of molten gold, landing on me. "You must be the stray," Altair said, not unkindly, but with an arrogance that was as natural to him as breathing. He looked me up and down, his gaze lingering on the way I clutched my heavy coat around me despite the climate control. "I was told I'd have a roommate. I didn't expect a shadow." "I stay out of the way," I murmured, my voice rusty from disuse. I moved toward the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. "You won't even know I'm here." Altair leaned back against the mahogany desk, crossing his arms. "That's a shame. I was hoping for some entertainment. The sycophants in this school are dreadfully boring." I didn't reply. I entered my room and locked the door. Then, I slid down against the wood, trembling. The proximity to his power, his raw, unfiltered solar energy, was making the blight under my bandages itch. It reacted to him. The darkness in me wanted to consume the light in him. I was a bomb, and I had just moved in with the spark. Weeks turned into months, and the torture was exquisite. Altair Veilron was relentless. He was a creature of the sun, loud, charismatic, and physically invasive. He walked around the dorm half-naked. He left his swords on the dining table, and he constantly tried to goad me into conversation. "You eat like a bird, Ren," he commented one evening. We were in the common area. I was eating a nutrient bar, fully dressed in my stifling uniform. He was sprawled on the couch, reading a tactical manual. "I'm not hungry," I said, keeping my eyes on my textbook. "You're also sweating," he observed, his voice dropping an octave. "It's 70 degrees in here, yet you're wearing wool and high collars. Are you hiding a tattoo?" "A lover's mark." I stiffened. "I have a skin condition. Sensitivity to light." "Is that so?" Altair stood up. He moved with the grace of a predator, silent and fluid. Before I could retreat, he was standing behind my chair. I could feel the heat radiating off him. "You know, my family's magic specializes in healing, cauterization, purification. It's not that kind of condition," I snapped, standing up abruptly. My chair screeched against the floor. Pain lanced through my side. A fresh crack in the skin of my ribs. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from crying out. The scent of ozone and rot wafted up from my collar. The smell of the blight. Altair sniffed the air, his brow furrowing. "You smell like—" He paused, struggling to identify it. "Like a thunderstorm. Like ozone and old blood." "Leave me alone, Altair." I retreated to my room, locking the door. I tore off my shirt in front of the mirror. The bandages were soaked through with black fluid. The scales were spreading, creeping up from my ribs toward my heart. The proximity to Altair was accelerating it. His aura was so strong it was forcing my curse to react, to fight back. I needed to leave. I needed to drop out. But I had nowhere to go. Without the Academy's infirmary providing me with suppressants, I would be dead in a week. I cleaned the wounds, hissing through my teeth. Just survive the semester, I told my reflection. Just survive him. The breaking point came during the mid-year labyrinth trials. It was a team exercise. Of course, the instructors paired us by room. Xylander and Veilron. The shadow and the sun. The labyrinth was a magical construct deep beneath the Academy, filled with mana beasts and shifting walls. Our objective was to retrieve a crystal from the center. "Stay behind me," Altair ordered as we descended into the gloom. He summoned a ball of flame in his palm, illuminating the damp stone walls. "And try not to trip over your own brooding. Just get the crystal, Veilron," I muttered, gripping the hilt of my standard-issue dagger. My side was burning. I had taken a double dose of suppressants, but the magic density in the labyrinth was interfering with them. We fought well together, surprisingly. Altair was a whirlwind of fire and steel, decimating the stone golems that blocked our path. I covered his blind spots, using my smaller size and speed to hamstring enemies before they could strike him. We reached the center chamber. The crystal hovered on a pedestal over a dark chasm. "Too easy," Altair grinned, stepping forward. "Wait," I choked out. The blight flared, a searing agony that dropped me to one knee. Trap. It wasn't intuition. The void in my blood sang to the trap. It recognized the dark magic. The floor beneath Altair crumbled. It wasn't gravity. It was a gravity well, a singularity spell designed to crush anything that fell into it. Altair, for all his power, couldn't fly without leverage. He slipped, his fingers scrabbling against the edge. "Altair!" I screamed. I didn't think. I lunged. I caught his wrist with my left hand, my dominant hand, the one where the corruption was strongest. He dangled over the infinite blackness, looking up at me, eyes wide. "Ren, let go. You're not strong enough." He was heavy. The strain tore the skin on my shoulder. I felt the wet warmth of blood and ichor soak my uniform. But it wasn't just the weight. The gravity spell was eating at me. "Pull!" Altair roared, trying to swing his leg up. I gritted my teeth. I couldn't pull him up with physical strength alone. I had to use it. I closed my eyes and let the wall down. I embraced the monster. "Feed," I whispered to the blight. Black tendrils erupted from my sleeve, shattering the fabric of my uniform. They weren't just shadows. They were physical manifestations of the void, scaled and dripping with darkness. They wrapped around Altair's arm, anchoring him. Altair stared at the monstrous limb holding him, his face pale. With a primal scream, I heaved. The void tendrils surged with strength, yanking Altair up and over the ledge. He crashed onto the stone floor beside me. I scrambled back, clutching my arm. The tendrils receded, leaving my skin raw, cracked, and exposed. The sleeve of my uniform was gone. My secret was out. The arm was hideous. From shoulder to fingertips, it was a gauntlet of black, jagged scales, pulsing with a sick, violet light. The flesh around the edges was red and angry, where the human skin fought a losing war against the curse. Silence stretched between us, heavier than the stone ceiling. Altair sat up, breathing hard. He looked at the chasm, then at me, then at my arm. "Run," he whispered. "Don't," I rasped, scrambling backward until my back hit the wall. "Don't look at it. You're a void conduit." His voice wasn't accusatory. It was stunned. "That's why you hide. That's why you're dying. It's contagious." I lied, desperate to make him leave. "If you touch it, it will rot you too. Get away from me." Altair stood up. The fire in his hand died out, plunging us into dim ambient light. He took a step toward me. "Stay back," I shouted, holding my cursed arm against my chest. "You saved my life with that arm," Altair said, taking another step. "You let that thing eat you to save me." "I did what was required for the mission," I spat, trembling. The pain was unbearable now. Using the power had shattered the equilibrium. The blight was surging toward my heart. I coughed, and black blood splattered onto the gray stone. Altair was there in an instant. He ignored my flinching. He dropped to his knees and grabbed my right shoulder, the human one. "We need to get you to the infirmary. They can't fix this," I wheezed. "Just leave me here. I'll stabilize eventually. Or I won't." "Shut up," Altair growled. He scooped me up into his arms, bridal style. I was too weak to fight him. "I'm not leaving you in the dark." He didn't take me to the infirmary. He took me back to the dorm. He kicked the door open and laid me on his bed, the one with the silk sheets. "What are you doing?" I gasped. "The medical wing. They'll expel you," Altair said grimly, tearing open a first aid kit he kept in his tactical gear. "If the board finds out you're a conduit, they'll euthanize you. They think your kind are ticking time bombs." "I am a time bomb," I cried out as a spasm of pain arched my back off the mattress. "Not tonight." Altair stripped off his ruined tunic. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then he did something insane. He placed his hands directly onto the black scales of my exposed arm. "Stop!" I screamed. "It will kill you." "I am a Veilron," he said, his voice ringing with power. "Fire purifies." His hands began to glow, not with burning flame, but with a soft, white incandescence. It was the purest form of his mana. He pushed the light into me. The sensation was indescribable. It was like ice water hitting a burn, like oxygen rushing into a vacuum. The void in my blood shrieked and recoiled. Fought him. I saw black veins crawl up Altair's wrists, trying to infect him. "Altair, stop. You're getting hurt." He gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. "I can take it. Look at me, Ren." I looked up into his golden eyes. They were fierce, determined, and terrifyingly beautiful. "You've been carrying this alone for years," he said, his voice strained with effort. "Fighting a war inside your own body. Let me carry it for a minute." He leaned down. The distance between us vanished. He kissed me. It wasn't a tentative, romantic first kiss. It was a transfer of energy. His mouth was hot, demanding, breathing life into my decaying lungs. As he kissed me, the light from his hands surged, flooding my system. The pain vanished, replaced by a euphoria that made my toes curl. The black scales on my arm didn't disappear, but the angry red inflammation receded. The cracking stopped. The weeping ichor dried up. For the first time in years, the noise in my head, the constant whispering of the void, was silenced. He pulled back, gasping for air. He looked wrecked. There were faint gray lines tracing the veins of his arms, marks of the corruption he had absorbed, but his natural fire was already burning them away. "Why?" I whispered, tears leaking from my eyes. "Why would you do that?" Altair wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. He looked at his own hand, then at my scarred skin. "Because," he said softly, a crooked grin touching his lips, "I realized something in that labyrinth. I don't want to rule the world if it means ruling it without you. You're the only person in this entire godforsaken academy who looked at me and didn't see a prince. You just saw an annoying roommate. You are annoying," I choked out, a laugh bubbling up through the sob. "And you," he said, stroking the line where my human skin met the scales, "are beautiful. Broken, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But beautiful." He lay down beside me, pulling me against his chest. He didn't care about the blood or the grime. He wrapped his arms around me, his body heat acting as a permanent ward against the cold of my curse. "Sleep, run," he commanded softly. "I'll keep the walls up tonight." The next morning, the dynamic had shifted. The walls I had built over a lifetime were rubble at my feet. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, buttoning my shirt. The scales were still there, but they were dormant, quiet. Altair appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. He looked tired but smug. "You're wearing the uniform properly," he noted. "No extra layers. It's warmer today," I mumbled, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. Altair walked over, spinning me around. He adjusted my collar, his fingers brushing the sensitive skin of my neck. "We have to figure out a long-term solution," he said, his tone serious now. "My mana can suppress it, but we need a cure. I have access to the royal archives. We'll find something." "We?" I asked. "We," he confirmed. "You're stuck with me, Xylander. You saved the prince. That comes with consequences. Mostly, me bothering you for the rest of your life." He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. "And tonight we're trying that energy transfer again. I think I've refined the technique." I shivered, but not from the cold. "You just want to kiss me again," I accused. "That," Altair grinned, biting my earlobe gently, "is merely a bonus." I looked at our reflection in the mirror. The loner and the prince. The void and the sun. Shouldn't work. It was dangerous, reckless, and forbidden. But as his arms tightened around me, grounding me to the earth, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Ren finally let his guard down and Altair take control, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you risk your own life to heal a partner who was technically a monster? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.